And yeah, I'd like to welcome everybody to our RCNR Peer Advising Leaders Info session. My name is Sarah Rhodes, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the peer advising co-coordinators, and I have some fellow co-coordinators here with me, as well as some wonderful real-life peer advisors who are going to be able to share their insight with all of you. So I'll go ahead and I will pass it off to Jay to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Sevilla. I go by he, him. I advise for our nutritional science and toxicology majors, and I'm one of the co-coordinators for our peer advising program.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I'm the PMB major advisor. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm shadowing the co-leads for PAL because I will be stepping into the role next year.
And I will go ahead and pass it off to our fabulous peer advisors. Talon, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm Talon. I'm a fourth year MEB major, and I've been a peer advisor for the last year. And I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Nibriti. I use she, her, and I'm a genetics and plant biology major, and I've been a peer advisor for since August. So.
Yay, so we're so excited to see some students here, and if you have questions for us as we're moving through our presentation, the Q&A feature is open. You can also chat, or like it's also kind of a small group, so like you can also just raise your hand and we'd be happy to call on you as well. So however you feel most comfortable asking your questions. All right, let's get started. So what is it to be a PAL? So PAL stands for Peer Advising Leaders. And our PALs are really integral to our advising system here at CNR. As a peer advisor, it gives you the opportunity to help your fellow students navigate this complicated world that is UC Berkeley. It also provides an opportunity for our peer advisors to connect with our staff advisors, as well as connect with the larger Rausser College community. Our peer advisors also have the opportunity to help actively build the Rausser College community through our community building events, as well as their support at large-scale events such as Golden Bear Advising and Cal Day. And it's a really great opportunity to gain professional development skills. Talon, Navirti, do you want to talk a little bit about something you've learned as a peer advisor?
Yeah, I can go. I feel like before I started as a peer advisor, I like kind of kept to my major and didn't really like meet people outside of my major. So I feel like that's been a big plus of becoming a peer advisor, just like getting to know people outside of my major and like help them in their academic and personal pursuits. And then also just like communication skills, like you learn to communicate with people of like all different ages. So I've become like really close to a lot of the advisors and then also a lot of other students. So it's just good to get to know everyone in the RCNR community.
To add on to that, definitely huge emphasis on getting to meet a plethora of people and also practice active listening skills and kind of get an idea of the different majors and classes in CNR and how to like help people with scheduling or if they have concerns about their workload.
Awesome, thank you both. You want to move to the next slide, Jay?
Yeah, so here's a quote from a previous peer advisor about their experience. So my favorite thing about being a PAL is being able to support students in a variety of capacities, from academic to social support. I'm able to assist students in navigating a major declaration to discovering what clubs on campus they might enjoy. So from this quote, we can see that being a PAL is a great opportunity to be a help to students whether that is at an academic level, helping them explore majors or things within Rausser College, or even outside of Rausser College itself, growing more into the university. And that's why we really appreciate all that our PALs can provide, is because they can provide the students experience, whereas us as advisors, we can't really do that unless we've been students here. So yeah.
Great. And so, you know, if you apply to be a peer advisor and go through the interview process and are offered a position for the 2024-2025 academic year, you will be invited to our PALS training. And so that involves one full day of orientation training that we do before the start of the semester and before Golden Bear orientation, to get you oriented to orient our new students. And then we also continue our PALS training throughout the semester during our weekly peer advising meetings. We train our peer advisors in major and college specific policies, front desk procedures, diversity, equity, and inclusion training, team building. Navirti mentioned our active listening and counseling skills that we provide you guys training for. And then we recognize that that training continues throughout the fall semester so that you guys can continue building those really good skills to help our students. Talon or Navirti, would you like to speak to our PALS training and what it was like for you guys?
I could go. And I think with the training, it was just a really great opportunity to not only learn so many skills in terms of like the duties of a peer advisor, but also to just get to know the other pals and Sarah and Jay as we were beginning the program. And definitely we did a lot of activities to kind of prepare for what like a typical peer advising session might look like, or certain questions that people may have when they come in. So I think it was really good preparation for when the school year began, and kind of gave us good foundations to help people out.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it was really great getting to know everyone that you were going to be like working with and seeing so frequently. And then I know we went through like a lot of like hypothetical scenarios during our PAL training, which I found like really helpful. Because after like your first week there, like you have someone at the front desk who's always there to reference if you have questions, but you're kind of on your own as far as like answering questions go. So it's really good to like build those skills and like see what you might encounter. And it was just really helpful because I had never like been in a job like this before. And I feel like having the peer advising training really like let me know what I was going to be seeing on a day-to-day basis. So.
That is a perfect transition, Talon, to our next slide, the front desk. So Talon was referring to like after your training, we start you guys off right away doing your PAL office hour shifts. And so those shifts can take place in person, and you can see in that picture there, there's a Virti actually being a peer advisor, and that's the front desk in our resource center. So in 216 Mulford, and students can like come up to the desk and ask the peer advisors questions. And then something that we started during the pandemic and recognized, you know, that it was serving a lot of our students' needs, is we also have like a virtual front desk. So while you're sitting there at the peer advising window, you'll also have a Zoom open. And on that Zoom room, students can pop in and ask the peer advisors questions. Talon also mentioned like having some support while you're up there. Our wonderful intake advisor, Craig, sits just beyond the window, and he can answer questions as well. But we, you know, really empower the peer advisors to take all the knowledge that they gain during training and to use the resources that are provided to really help our students in navigating their questions and helping them with their problem, to solve their problems. Talon or Navirti, do you guys want to talk a little bit about, yeah, what a PAL's front desk shift looks like?
Yeah. I mean, it's really like, diverse depending on the time of the semester it is. So like at the beginning of the semester, a lot of people have questions about like what classes they should take, and if their course loads like are too heavy, and if they should like drop some classes or maybe take some the following semester. And then people have questions about like what are good classes to take based on our experience as peer advisors and like in CNR and just at Berkeley in general. And then a lot of people have questions about like SPUR applications or URAP applications at the beginning of the semester. And then like once the add drop deadline passes, then it's just more so like less questions about classes and more, sometimes people have like personal concerns and they'll come to us with them and we help as best we can and just facilitate like communication between them and their academic advisor, like if necessary. So it's really depends on the time of the semester, but I feel like you see like a lot of different things as a peer advisor.
I think to add on to that as well, one thing I've noticed, which has definitely been like a great learning experience, is that even if you are like the peer advisor for a certain major, you're very likely to get people from different majors. And I feel like for me personally, that's in helping people from different majors, I've learned a lot about like the different breadth requirements or like the way their like courses are structured in the upper division. So yeah, definitely you're not going to be restricted to people only in your major. You're very likely to meet like a bunch of people from different majors and even people from outside CNR who might be interested in transferring in.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing those experiences. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and talking about just getting to know people outside of your major, just being connected overall to people in the college and university. One thing that our peer advisors also participate in is creating community building events. So those are opportunities in the college to just have like fun social opportunities or experiences for you all as Rausser College students to get to know one another, get to know our peer advisors and some advisors as well that get to attend these events. And so some examples of events, if you haven't been able to attend, we had a tie-dyeing event where people got to tie-dye different articles or bags or different clothing things and got to keep all of those things. We also had a pumpkin painting event, so many P's, pumpkin painting with pals event around Halloween time to be festive. And so lots of students came out to that to decorate some pumpkins for themselves. So what we're learning is that Rausser College students really love art. And you all are really great at art as well. And then we also had a De-Stress with Dogs event last year with some of the advisors' dogs to just hang out and have a fluffy buddy to spend the afternoon with. So that's something that our peer advisors help out with, is creating these events for all of you as Rausser students to participate in and just get to know one another. Talon or Nivriti, I know that you are currently planning out your community building events, but do you want, either of you want to speak to just what it's been like to attend and just what, from what you know, the kind of back end of creating those events?
I think for this semester, we've been definitely working on creating some community events, and it's been really nice to work with the other pals to kind of coordinate these. And I think with a lot of them, we plan them well in advance, and we'll kind of work backwards to figure out what times might suit the needs of like students. Like if, for example, we don't want to be doing something in the middle of finals week when we know people will probably be stressed. But if we are doing something during dead week, it would be likely a way to de-stress or like a nice chill activity to get people involved without like kind of worrying about like the anxiety of the exams. And yeah, I think definitely for me personally, this is like my first semester being part of planning the community building events. So I'm really looking forward to how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, unfortunately, last semester I didn't get to go to any because they were always like right when I had a 2-hour class, and that was unfortunate. So I didn't get to go to any of them. But I talked to a lot of the other peer advisors who like went to the pumpkin painting and tie-dye event, and they all said it was really great. And it's just nice to be able to like hang out with people that you're not usually with and like get to talk to them, maybe meet a new friend. Because even though like RCNR is like a really small community, we're also busy and we don't always have time to like go out and meet people. So these types of events are really good. Just make a friend, maybe meet someone in the same class as you and have like a study buddy. So
Awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah, and just to give a little plug for the community building events that they were talking about planning this semester, we have some exciting ones for our RCNR community this spring. We're hosting a board game event, as well as a flower arranging event. So you can take home a beautiful bouquet arranged with our peer advisors. And then we're also hosting a carnival/field day once the weather cooperates a little bit more for us. So keep an eye out for those emails. They're going to be really nice and a really great way to build community within our small college feel. I have another quote for us from a previous peer advisor. So my favorite part about being a PAL has been being able to work closely with the RCNR advising staff and being able to be one of the first welcoming faces for incoming students during Golden Bear orientation. And yeah, I can definitely say that it's really fun hearing from students about meeting peer advisors at Golden Bear orientation. You know, you have all of these like fresh new students, freshmen and transfer students, and seeing other students and being able to hear their experiences is really grounding for our students. And then, you know, they'll tell the advisors about it, or I've even had it inspire future peer advisors to apply. So yeah, it's a really great way to be the face of our office.
So as Sarah and I mentioned earlier, we love to appreciate our pals for all the great things that they do. So a couple examples of that, we'll have like an end of semester dinner each semester to celebrate all the work that they've done throughout the semester, show some highlights of all the things that they've, all of their work, and just, yeah, share our appreciation for them. We'll also have fun icebreakers during our weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings, just as a good way to continue to connect with one another as a team, as coordinators with our peer advisors, and for the peer advisors to connect with them, with each other too. We really love to use Kahoot as a way to help with our trainings, and that seems to be year to year seems to be a really fun way to practice what we're learning and gauge our knowledge of peer advising things. And we love snacks. So just a good way, like who doesn't want to connect over food, you know? So these are all the different ways that we as coordinators also want to make sure that we are showing our appreciation to our peer advisors.
Great. So, you know, we recognize that we are all very busy human beings. And as fun as this sounds, you know, we want to understand what the actual time commitment of being a peer advisor is. So to break it down, in the fall semester, we have a one-day training orientation. And then the peer advisors are enrolled in a 1-unit peer advising course, SPM 198. And the time commitment is 3 hours a week. So 1 unit equals 3 hours a week. And so we have 1 hour of the class, which is like the meetings in which we continue our training and eat snacks and do Kahoot and learn more about our college and our advising skills. And then peer advisors are expected to work 2 hours of peer office hours each week. So at that front desk, 2 hours a week. And at the end of the fall semester, the PALs are evaluated and, you know, assuming everything is great, we invite them back for the spring semester. And in the spring semester, our peer advisors are paid an hourly wage. So they're paid $18.07. That's Berkeley minimum wage. And then we shift the breakdown of our time expectations, but it's still about 3 hours a week. Our peer advising staff meetings switch to every other week, and that's to make room for our Cal Day commitment. And so the peer advisors are expected to participate for 5 hours on Cal Day in the spring. They are still doing their 2 hours of peer advising each week, and then they're also hosting a community building event. So that's kind of the time commitment breakdown of the peer advising program. Talon or Navirti, do you want to talk about the time commitment?
Yeah, I think that it's really manageable. Also, like when you know that you're going to be a peer advisor for the following semester, as long as you like structure your classes like around your time commitments, it's pretty easy to get everything done. Like last semester when we were having our weekly meetings, it worked out really great because I had class from like 2 to 5, and then we had our meeting from 5 to 6, and it just like worked out nicely. But also a lot of people I know like don't have classes right before and didn't mind like coming in for the meetings because like Jay said, we always have snacks and it's always just fun. We always have really fun questions at the beginning of the meeting that sometimes are a little odd, but they get you thinking, like get your creativity flowing. And I really liked Golden Bear orientation. I don't think it's like, yes, we were there for a full day, but it doesn't feel very long. It was just fun to get to talk to people. And it definitely doesn't feel like you're working. So that was fun. And then Cal Day, I think everyone loves Cal Day. So even though I'm going to be like working, I'm really excited to get to hang out with everyone and talk to the newly admitted students. And then your peer advising shifts are 2 hours a week, which I think is like very doable. I have mine stacked in between classes, and it's just nice. Like when it's slow, I'm either working on my community event or I'm just catching up on homework, and it's like a study time. So it's can be very helpful if you're just looking for a few hours of like downtime and it's quiet. It's nice.
Yeah, Talon really kind of encapsulated a lot of what that experience looks like from week to week. And I think one thing I wanted to add is like if there is some sort of schedule issue, one thing that's been really great is that you can kind of communicate with other pals, and usually you'll be able to find someone who you can swap with, where you can take their hours for a day if you can't make your own. And I think that's been really helpful. Like in case like something comes up, you can still make your 2 hours a week.
Awesome. Thank you both. And I'm encouraged to hear that, yes, it feels very manageable for you both and how you're able to integrate, time management into all of that process and scheduling. So how to apply? Prepare your resume and then fill out the application, which I'll go ahead and put into the chat. We'll first do a round of group interviews in person to really gauge, like, because peer advising is, especially with the community building events, is all about teamwork. And so we definitely want to see what your teamwork skills are like. And then from there, we'll start to select people from the group interview to move on to an individual interview virtually. And then if selected, you'll become a PAL. So as I get the application ready into the chat, if anyone has questions, you can use the Q&A feature, or, oh, that's cool. That's not what I wanted to do, but you can use a Q&A feature, or you can feel free to come off of mute or raise your hand.
Hi, yeah, I have one question. For PALS, is it possible to like reapply? So let's say like you get it like for the next year, could you reapply for the following year, or is it just like a 1 year type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So our peer advising program, we have our peer advisors, and then we have our senior peer advisors. And so this is a new rollout that we did this year. And so our peer advisors are able to, our current peer advisors who aren't graduating are able to apply to be a senior PAL for the following academic year. And 2 peer advisors from that group will be able to move on to be senior PALs. And that requires a larger leadership role. They're seen as, experienced peer advisors. They provide a lot of support during the training. They also plan their own community building events in the fall. And then they act as leads for helping our peer advisors plan the community building events in the spring. So there is an opportunity to continue on. However, it's kind of a separate application process.
Okay, thank you.
I can read a question from the audience. What are the operating times of the student center / office hours? Yeah, I can answer that. So our resource center is in 260 Mulford, and that is open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 8:30 to 4:30, Wednesdays from 1 to 4. 1 to 4:30. And then our peer advising hours are from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then the peer advisors sign up for the hour shifts there. And they all start at Berkeley time. Sabrina?
Hi, sorry if you mentioned this earlier, but did you have a number for how many PALs you're looking to recruit for the upcoming year?
No, we didn't go over that. So thank you for asking. So we're hoping to take on 12 new peer advisors for the new academic year. And then we'll have 2 senior peer advisors. So 14 total, but 12 from this new applicant pool. Yes,
Okay.
Lee?
Hi, Sarah. I had a question about if we were possibly planning to do like a study abroad for the fall semester, if that would affect our application or the training process, because the fall is like that kind of chunk where we would be starting our like new training. Just curious about how that would work out.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the peer advising program is a year-long commitment. So if you're studying abroad or graduating in the 2024-2025 academic year and you can't be there for both semesters, it means that you won't be eligible for this academic year. But if you're going to be back, for your senior year, I encourage you to apply for that year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sabrina?
Hi, sorry, just a clarifying question about the new advisors versus senior advisor. The senior advisors just means that they have already been a peer advisor before and not that you're actually a senior year level, right?
Yes, thank you. That is a little confusing. Senior just means experienced peer advisor. So like Nivirti or Talon could be senior peer advisors the next academic year because they've already been a peer advisor. But peer advisors in general can be from all class levels.
Okay, perfect, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, here's a question. Any tips for writing this free response questions on the application? Any word limit? So I'll take the last question, like any word limit. There isn't a word limitation on there, but maybe Naverti or Talon, do you remember what you wrote, or do you want to share a little bit about what the application process was like for you?
Yeah, what is the prompt? I guess I can pull it up on my end, but is it just why do you want to be a peer advisor?
Yes, it is. Why do you want to become a peer advisor? Which parts of the job description do you find interesting or appealing? And do you have any previous customer service or peer advising experience? If so, please share.
Yeah, I don't remember like exactly what I wrote, but knowing myself, it was probably along the lines of like I wanted to be a peer advisor because one, I wanted like a leadership role because I had never had one before. And I thought it would be really beneficial for like future pursuits in my academic career and professional career. So that was like one of my main reasons for applying. And then also I just felt like I was entering my senior year and I was like not involved in CNR like at all. And I really wanted to just like meet people before I graduate and like see everything that CNR had to offer because my first 2 years were like during COVID and I feel like I missed out a lot on like the Rausser College experience and I was like lacking that like um community feel that I know Rausser has. So I really wanted to um be a part of that. And then also I just felt like I had like applied for so many things and like even though I wasn't really engaged with like CNR, I had really like navigated my way around Berkeley and I knew like how to apply for things and like outside experiences that I felt like I could share with other people and like wanted to share with like my fellow peers. So even though it wasn't specific to CNR, I felt like I had qualities that I could use as a peer advisor to like help other people. And then during the interview process, the first one, like Sarah said, is like a group interview. And I just tried to like be true to myself and come up with like creative things that I could like talk about and just like work well with the group that I was in because being a peer advisor really is just like working with the people around you. You have to be good at like working with a team and like not being the one who's always in charge. Like you need to be good at delegating tasks and like coming up with things together. So I really tried to do that. And then the personal interview was more so just like personality questions. And like some scenario questions. So I just tried to answer them like truthfully and draw on like past experiences I had had in my academic and personal life that I felt like would be like relevant to answer the questions and like show, I think it was Jay who interviewed me, so show him why I would be good for this position. So yeah.
Yeah, I think once again, Talon did a great job of explaining that. I think I'm trying to think of what I could add on. Uh, Definitely for the writing portion, I also had kind of a similar like sort of perspective to Talon where I wanted to be more involved with CNR, especially because like I love being in the genetics and plant bio major, but we are a smaller major, so I thought it would be a really good opportunity to meet like incoming freshmen or like other juniors, sophomores in the major and get to know like their interests because I think all the GPB majors I'd met so far, like I could probably count them on one hand at the point that I was applying to this. And definitely I have met a lot more GPB majors, which has been super nice. I think another thing was definitely in writing about like experience. I kind of talked about like past like leadership roles or like jobs I'd worked and um I think with the essays I feel like the best way that might be to go about it is be like sincere and like honest about what you've done and how you could like leverage that and yeah, I think the group interview was definitely it was a it was really great to meet other people who were applying to the program. And then some of the people I met in like the interview group I was in even ended up being pals who I work with right now, which was really fun. And I think the individual interview is like a very standard kind of interview where I was also interviewed by Jay. And I think I remember there was another former pal involved in my interview. So it was really great to ask her about like questions about what the program looked like and what her experiences were with that. And yeah, it was just a great process overall.
Awesome. Thank you both.
I
Oh,
was
Talon, do you
also,
have more?
yeah, I was just gonna add one thing. I think also like if you haven't had experience in leadership, like that's okay. Also, you don't like need to have previous experience to be a pal. And I feel like like Sarah and Jay really understand that this is like a learning opportunity and people are like learning these skills. So don't feel like if you haven't had any leadership experience, you shouldn't apply. Because even if you've had experience in like any field of work, or even if you haven't, even if it's just in clubs, like that all matters. So I would include like everything on your application that you feel would be like relevant.
Awesome. Thank you both. And that answered one of our other questions about how to prepare for the interviews. So that's really great. And yeah, we still have 15 minutes left. Does anyone else have either questions for Sarah or myself about the more like logistical process of being a PAL, or application process or interviewing process, or even questions for Nivriti or Talon, just more about their experience as peer advisors? And thank you, Sarah, for sharing links on interviewing and resumes.
I just wanted to say, like, the Career Center's page for resumes is so useful, and I think if you haven't checked it out, I would highly encourage that because it's such a great resource.
Okay, well, I believe that was about 7 seconds. So we'll go ahead and end our info session. Thank you everyone for attending. The application link is in the chat. Applications have been open and are open through February 22nd. And hopefully we will see some of you in future steps of the application process. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.